here with my friend
Jennifer Guskin,
and we need your help. We are right now working on advocacy for combating human trafficking, and here's why. So we'll give you a little bit of background of our story and why we're doing what we're doing.
I was adopted as an infant by a couple who sold me throughout my childhood. I have been to Epstein Island and on multiple Lolita Express types of flights as a child. After I went public, Child Protective Services opened a substance-exposed newborn case, even though all tests came back negative, and they told me that if I wouldn't stop posting on social media, I would never see my daughter again. I started to connect how I was adopted as an infant and then sold throughout my childhood, how many other children who have been through the adoption, foster, and CPS pipelines have also been trafficked to Epstein's Elk.
And as many of you guys know already, based on the work that we do at the Karis Project, I'm an American Indian born in Canada under the Jay Treaty. My father and I were exposed in the improper contagion mitigation for the COVID pandemic in early 2020. As a result of this, I lost everything: a house, cars, corporate assets, jobs. Bank accounts were shut down in Canada, and I fled to the US as an American Indian, fully documented, and was trafficked by rogue agents in ICE and other agents in the government, and forced to live with single American men. I was even imprisoned for 7 months initially, and then trafficked throughout the states. Put on full surveillance tracking and wasn't allowed to leave the city, house, or state without permission, or work without permission. And that happened for many years, and I was on and off the streets because of that, and in and out of shelters. And that is just a small example of what many go through in this trafficking system, be it the family courts or otherwise. So that's why the Karis Project will be going to DC to speak with representatives and do live reporting. We're also going to be in contact with other families who are dealing with human trafficking, and through the CPS courts or through any other means, lesser versions of trafficking, and doing reporting on them live and otherwise. We will also be working on, we ultimately want to shine light on what's going on with the trafficking here in the US. And we also want to meet with various agencies in DC, and we'll be going back and forth for training sessions and other things so that we can be better equipped to help people deal with resolving some of the issues that we're seeing. We will also be putting forth petitions in government to help people get justice, and that's something that we have been working on already so far. We have some petitions that have recently been filed in the state of Colorado, Michigan, Texas, and Arizona, and we will be continuing.
But we can't do this on our own. We will be traveling to events and training courses, as well as DC on a consistent basis. We also have to get acceptable equipment, such as computers, cameras, interview gear, etc. There will be other miscellaneous costs that would also be like gas, food, and rooms if necessary.
So that is why we are working towards combating human trafficking, and that is exactly why we need your help. We cannot do this alone, and most what the Karis Project does is on its own dime. And so we do love and appreciate each and every one of you that support us and all the work that we do. As many of you know, we also live stream on Lindell TV every day. And everything we do, like I said, is on our own dime. So we appreciate all the love and support and all the people who do donate. And we would very much love and appreciate that still. Thank you everybody for your time and considerations. And thank you for all the support. And we will catch you guys in the next one, and hopefully we might see you guys in the future and come across you and maybe be able to do some great things together.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Karis Project podcast. Today we have with us John Goodman. He is back to start talking to us again about some of the mail fraud issues and the executive order that got struck down. Obviously, my daughter, the host. Welcome back to the show. And you want to give us, reintroduce yourself?
Welcome, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Dale. Glad to be back with you here on the Karis Project. So I'm John Goodman, and I am a big advocate as far as stopping the rigged elections that has been afflicting this country over the last several years. There's always been some cheating in elections, but it's never gotten to the magnitude that it is now. And just a couple examples. Obviously, 2020, we all know that, it was rigged. We know that because the Supreme Court made all the states clean up their voter rolls in 2022, and there was almost 4 million fraudulent mail-in ballots just in 2020. And you can think of it like this. In 2020, Joe Biden got 81 million votes from his basement during a pandemic. But in 2024, President Trump got 4 million votes less than Joe Biden did in 2020, even though Donald Trump won all the swing states, the Electoral College, and even the popular vote. If that doesn't tell you something is wrong, and plus the fact there is some picture proof, we won't go into that today. We did on the last show. But the big problem is now we don't just have election fraud as far as mail-in ballot fraud, but now we have lawfare contributing to election fraud. And so let's give an example of something that just happened Friday. On March 25th of this year, Donald Trump signed an executive order, and that executive order said that you have to have ID and be an American citizen to vote. Now, in my world, that's pretty reasonable. And in every other country, it's very reasonable. If you think I could just go say to French President Macron, I want to vote in the French elections, he'd tell me to get lost. I couldn't just show up I couldn't just show up in England on election day and go into the city of London and vote. So we are the only civilized nation in this world where you don't have to be a citizen or show ID to vote. So on Friday, a big setback for election integrity. Judge Denise Casper, a federal judge in Massachusetts, she struck down President Trump's March 25th executive order, and she says it's fine for illegals to vote. Now, I never thought in a million years I would live long enough to see a judge violate the Constitution straight up like that. I never thought I would see that from either a Democrat or a Republican judge, because it's a straight violation of the Constitution. So, Dale, if we can flash up a picture of federal judge Denise Casper, and then we can flash up the actual Constitution, and there is Judge Casper. Friday made the ruling that it's fine for illegals to vote. And she also made the ruling that it's fine to accept ballots after Election Day. Remember 2020, U-Haul trucks were pulling up in the middle of the night with laundry bags full of ballots. And there is the actual clause in the Constitution. I don't know if we can clear it up at all, but take my word for it. And you don't have to be a constitutional genius or even follow politics. Common sense tells you that the founding fathers put in the Constitution that you had to be a citizen to vote. And they did, and that's it, even though it's not the clearest picture I've ever seen, but it is the actual founding fathers saying you have to be an American citizen to vote in elections in the United States. So this judge, this is egregious. It's the biggest lawfare we've seen yet, and it's spreading. And it has to be called out. And that's why we're showing a picture of this judge, not to dox her. We're not giving out her address. We're not giving out her phone number.
Whoops. What?
I don't know.
Of course it did.
Wow.
Okay. So we're going to have to scrap this and start over. Dale, are we on live right now?
Wow, yeah, we're live. I'm going to have to edit that out, man. There's just...
I'm sorry to the viewers. Did the viewers see that?
Yeah, they did. It's fine. Okay. I'm going to have to just make sure I close everything because I got to clean up some stuff in here. Yeah.
Did you plan that just to see if I was quick on my feet?
Yeah, something like that. I just want to make more work for myself. Let's...
Okay. Yeah. But nevertheless, there's no one here on this panel that's homophobic. We have no problem for people living the life the way they want to. Okay, that's different than forcing transgender onto our children. So if you're homosexual and living your life happily, I have no problem with it whatsoever.
That there were actually
So
two women in that. I mean, that
Yeah,
was
those
from
are two
okay.
yeah,
yeah,
they
yeah.
Yeah.
From a previous podcast we
Well,
did. But
yeah, they're living
yeah,
their life the way they choose to live it, and I'm not going to put anyone down for that. So, as we get back to the election fraud discussion here, so the judge in Massachusetts, now illegal immigrants, migrants, non-citizens, you can use whatever terminology you want, will be able to vote. Now, I'm sure there's going to be an appeal, and we hope that there is a winning appeal. But I just wanted to show you that how far lawfare has gone when a judge knowingly and willingly
oh yeah.
violates the Constitution. I mean, it's not even unintentional
yeah,
Yeah.
I
comments.
mean, it's
Go ahead.
yeah, and it's like, yeah, it's frustrating to me because like on the constitutional level, yes, that like illegals can never vote. Like it's a crime. It's just straight up a crime. And secondly, as I'm a Native American, like I'm American Indian under the Jay Treaty, I've never cast a vote for anyone in my life. But uh as an American Indian under the Jay Treaty, like we're Native American tribes, they're their own nation. So that's why America does treaties with them, because you don't do treaties with people of different skin color, you do it with other nations. Um, but as an American Indian born in Canada, I don't think I'm even allowed to vote in the US election. And I'm allowed to like be here to live, work, retire, study, just like any other American. I have all the same rights, but I'm still not allowed to vote, I don't think, in the US election because American Indians are under the Jay Treaty, or natives are technically not even American. So the fact that they're letting illegals vote, even though both land in Canada and the US are, natives just as much as any other American, is crazy to me because like I have every right to this land as an American, but I still am not allowed to be a part of the American election voting. But illegals who have no connection to this land or anything whatsoever have no like interest in the progression of this country in any positive way other than their own selves. Like they're allowed to just show up one day and vote. That doesn't make any sense. Like there's people who can, it just I don't understand that logic because they cut so many rights away from Americans, from natives, from people who can trace their family back here, like Americans and natives, for hundreds of years. So it's like, why are we allowed to just give all of our rights away to people who they have no connection to us? They don't care. They don't care about us.
And you make a good point because the Biden administration treated illegal immigrants better than they treated Americans. And here's a prime
Yeah.
example. The Biden administration knew that someone had illegally violated and crossed the border, which is a crime in itself. And then the Biden administration put those individuals that had already broken the law that were here illegally, they housed them in hotels. And I can tell you right now, the Crowne Plaza in Governor Nancy Hochul's sanctuary city of New York was turned into a migrant shelter, the Crowne Plaza. Why did the Crowne Plaza do that? Because $2.1 million they were getting paid for it. And the point is, while our government is housing illegals at the Crowne Plaza, we have American citizens and American veterans sleeping under bridges without a morsel of food or a pot to pee in. I mean, it's just ugly. So they have free medical care while they were at the Crowne Plaza, free meals. This is a serious problem. And that's exactly why we talk about this judge now that has just fed into that narrative by saying you don't have to be a citizen and you don't even have to have an ID.
Well,
So I could walk in the day before the election from Russia. I could be from Russia and I could somehow be here and vote in the election because no one's going to ask my name. No one's going to look at the voter rolls. No one's going to ask for ID. This is really an all-time lawfare, and America should be very concerned. It's dangerous,
Well,
absolutely dangerous.
the only reason why you would do that is it's because you're trying to change the country by changing the vote, and so that you could get in people that are going to drive your policies. And
Yes.
this is where I mean, I didn't disagree with what Trump was doing when he arrested judges, and I think more judges should be arrested, because if you're going to, a judge can decide something based on the law. A judge does not have the authority to strike down the Constitution. And if something that was being passed by executive order to restore something that's constitutional, a judge has just then used their position to destroy the republic, which is not sanctioned by the Constitution. It is not designated as the powers that are granted to a judge or inherent in the courts. And therefore, that judge not only has exceeded their jurisdiction, but they have, in essence, struck down the Constitution and allowed crimes to continue and should be arrested because they facilitated every single one of those crimes.
And that judge you're talking about, Dale, just so the viewers know, there was a defendant in front of a judge who was wanted by ICE for assault and also being here illegally. And ICE was in the courtroom. And as soon as the proceedings were over, can you believe this? A United States judge, knowing that this was an illegal immigrant that had committed crimes on top of just being here, escorted and shuffled out through a private judge's chambers hallway and exit door out the back of the courthouse. She is currently being charged by the Department of Justice. They caught that person about 5 blocks down the road. But just the notion that a judge would take a defendant who's got an assault charge and here illegally, bring him behind the bench, take them back into the chambers and escort them out a private security judge's door
And help them escape.
like a bad TV movie. And you can look it up on Google now. It's a bad TV movie. And this is, again, lawfare, Democrat lawfare. That is what is happening here. But I want to just go ahead, Dale. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, since you're talking about lawfare, I know that you had something here about Tina Peters. We should bring that up.
We should bring Tina Peters up. Tina Peters was the county clerk in Mesa County, Colorado. And Tina Peters' job was to oversee elections, among her other responsibilities. And during the election, she started looking at some of the early returns, looking at the voting machines, which is her job, and she could tell the numbers were skewed. And she started bringing more light onto it, started talking about it. Less than 2 hours later, they came in and arrested her, and they took her to jail, and they charged her with crimes that are actually her job. Now, if she hadn't been the county clerk, it would have been charges. And she is in jail right now. And there's a slide, Donald Trump, put it up if you would. Donald Trump is even commenting on this. This is so egregious. This is like Russia, the KGB yanking someone on the streets because she was getting very close to having proof of election fraud in Colorado. There's a slide on there that Donald Trump is talking about her being a political prisoner. Do you see it?
Oh, let me grab that one.
Donald Trump, while you're grabbing that, I will tell that the viewers, Colorado was very, very slick about this because the crimes were federal. The bogus crimes were federal, but they charged her in a state court. So Donald Trump could not have pardon power. They knew up front. You don't have it?
No, you just have the one about the mail-in ballots.
Okay, no problem. Well, Donald Trump, I will tell you right now, Donald Trump weighed in on this in a very big way, and he's called it a political prisoner, and he directed Pam Bondi to get her out. But it is not so easy because they tried her in state court, and presidential pardons do not cover state court. So she is in jail. She is a political prisoner. Again, another example of lawfare. And I made a 1-minute promotional video like many others. We're all calling Jared Polis to the governor's office saying release her. And I know thousands and thousands of people have. But so far, she's still incarcerated. And it is a question of, you got too close to exposing us. We got to yank you off the streets and get you away. Go ahead.
Yeah, one thing that people need to understand with Tina Peters is that the state government got all of her evidence and they have custody of it that she was unable to put into court because Kaysha was there and took it in Colorado, and she had a petition for redress of grievances to the state of Colorado. She was denied her petition because they have not brought it to the floor. They have not read it in. They have not placed it before anyone to make any decision, and they don't have a choice. They have to read it in, but they didn't because it has exculpatory evidence and a whole lot of other crimes that are of a federal jurisdiction, which includes a lot of information as to what happened to Donald Trump, President Trump, in the 2020 election and a lot of the crimes with COVID. So they are definitely concealing criminal activity in the state of Colorado that affects the federal government. This is where Article 4, Section 4 now can be used to deal with that.
And I did find the quote from President Trump that I was just referring to. And President Trump, it says, Tina is an innocent political prisoner being horribly and unjustly punished in the form of cruel and unusual punishment. And then he said that he was directing the Department of Justice to do everything they could to get her out of jail. And they have moved her actually to more of a secure prison. Why? Because not only do they want to lock her up, they don't want her to talk. Because they want her silenced, cancel culture. She knows some things about the fraud in Colorado. So she's been moved to even a more secure facility. And this is a 70-year-old woman who's had COVID in jail, who has all kinds of other medical problems. This is absolutely a Democrat sickness. And that is a strong statement, but when you are doing things that we've discussed on this show. But we're going to have some more positive topics coming up in a moment. So the bottom line is, we know that there was a lot of fraud in 2020. And we know that the Democrats fell in love with mail-in ballots because they're easy to fraud, and they turned it into a weapon. And they did. And, the proof is out there now. Joe Biden was supposed to switch it back to the law of absentee voting, which we've been doing, by the way, since the Revolutionary War in 1775. Okay? And the reason why Joe Biden didn't switch it back is because he wanted illegals to vote. He wanted votes coming in trucks 7, 8, 10 days after the election. This is no surprise. So he did not switch it back. That's what that March 25th executive order by Donald Trump was doing. It wasn't creating laws. It was going back. There you go. And this is very important because there is some confusion in the country about the difference between mail-in ballots and absentee voting. So I'm glad you put that up there. Absentee voting, which is what's supposed to be going on, is for individuals that cannot physically or mentally, legitimately make it to the polling station. Everyone else either votes early voting in person with an ID on, and you're on the voter rolls, or election day, same thing. That just got struck down, but nevertheless, absentee vote is for a specific group of people. There was about, about 25 criteria where you could vote by mail. But the states opened it up to where you can be 25 years old and an LA Fitness Center owner in perfect health, and now you can vote by mail. It breeds fraud because instead of 4 or 5 million votes for legitimate vote by mail people. Now there's 156 million votes in the mail.
Well, yeah,
Wow.
there used to be
Wow.
a specific criteria that you had to meet in order to get the absentee vote. That is so that people who, for
That is true.
example, in the military, or if you were crippled, right? You were a veteran, you lost your legs, you couldn't move, but you still wanted to vote. They allowed provision for those people. But like you said, if you're an able-bodied human being and you can get up and get down to the voting center, you don't get an absentee ballot. Sorry, that's not the way life
That's right.
works, right?
That's
And
correct. That's correct. And the way it started in the Revolutionary War in 1775 with absentee voting, the troops were on the battlefield with bayonets. I mean, this was 1775. They couldn't get to the shack or the little
no,
house on the prairie type looking shack to vote. And then absentee voting for the first 150 years, it was mostly during the war for troops, like they used it again in the War of 1812 to 1815. They used it in the Civil War from 1861 to 1865. But then in the early 1900s, there was lots of disease. Many people were very ill. We didn't have the medical technology, vaccines. You would be dying of a common flu because there were no Z-Packs. So they made absentee voting now include public citizens, not just military troops that were fighting wars, because so many people were sick. And it's been that way ever since. As recently as 2018 midterms, we used absentee voting. And we still would be today if it wasn't interrupted by the 2020 pandemic. But it never went back because it's a weapon for the Democrats.
it's funny
Donald
that
Trump. Yeah, go ahead,
it's
Dale. Go ahead.
funny that you mentioned that they brought it in with disease when they never had issues with disease like that before. It makes you kind of wonder when you start thinking that they expanded it because of disease, which I tend to think that they probably created the circumstances for more disease to spread. And then now again, you see more disease used to justify having ballots just mailed into
But I'm
everybody.
not sure the mindset was the same for doing it. I'm not
No,
sure that they were in those days thinking, yeah, we're going to go ahead and do it so we can overthrow Donald Trump and
no,
get us in.
but the Rockefellers, we knew that they were taking control of the medical
Yeah,
institutions and
no,
they were
you're right.
criminals. So
The methods are similar.
more
Yeah,
sick people, more money, right?
that's true. That's true. So we're in trouble right now with election integrity to some extent because not only now has illegal voting by non-citizens been approved, but counting late ballots has been approved. But there is one area that we can still take several million votes out of the mail, fraudulent votes, I should say, out of the mail. It won't take all of fraud away, but it'll take some. And I have a plan that I have developed, and you know what it is. And it is, let's just say I'm trying to get it to the powers to be. And the bottom line is this: Donald Trump should do another executive order bringing back absentee ballot, because you have to remember when the states expanded the voting so anyone could vote, that was the end of absentee voting because there were no parameters anymore. You didn't have to be just in hospice or overseas military or in a nursing home or mentally retarded. Now, as I said, you could be healthy as an ox and vote. So he needs to sign an executive order going back to absentee voting for people that really need it. We don't deprive any American citizen from voting. And that will take away all those nationwide mail-in ballots. Now, it's tricky because Article 10 in the Constitution says government cannot supersede the Constitution. And in the Constitution, it does say that states have primarily 100% power over elections. Now, I want to take a watershed moment right here. I want to tell your viewers, we're going to drop the bomb on you right now. And is this the codicil?
This is the one that says that primarily the states hold the authority
Yes.
to regulate elections.
Yes. Can we blow that up? I want to go into this because this is something that even constitutional scholars seem to be unaware of. It's true the Constitution does say that states have primarily 100% power over elections, but I found a small codicil / clause in the Constitution that says, and it's up right now, I believe. Yes, it is. It's up right now. And as you can see, it says the states lose their, thank you, blow it up as much as possible. States lose their 100% power over elections if they do anything or their actions, quote, straight out of the Constitution, quote, change electoral outcomes unfairly, unquote. I couldn't believe it. All these years, we've been under the impression that no matter if the states cheated, whatever they did, we couldn't touch them because it says that in the Constitution.
Yeah,
but nobody knows about this codicil. And it goes on to say, excuse me for one moment, Dale, it goes on to say that if the states do anything that changes electoral outcomes unfairly, Congress is to step in and fix. And it even goes on to say that the reason the founding fathers are telling us the reason they're doing it is they want a two-tier check system on elections, both at the state level and the federal level. Now, why are the constitutional scholars, and I've talked to a couple of them that didn't even know about this. So Donald Trump also has this clause to undo nationwide mail-in ballots, because when they expanded it, this is a big point, Dale, when they expanded it to nationwide for everybody, it became fraud, and that, as the Constitution says, changes electoral outcomes unfairly. This clause could change everything. This clause could easily get it back.
Yes,
along with the fact that absentee voting has been around since 1775. Between the two, Donald Trump could sign another executive order, and the only votes in the mail would be those going to the elderly and overseas military, the way it was as recently as 7 years ago, before the Democrats said these mail-in ballots are wonderful. We can pull off close elections with them too. And then it never got changed back. He tried to change it back on as far as the citizens only voting, but this part hasn't been addressed. And this is the blueprint, because if a judge strikes this down, the judge is saying, I don't care about the Constitution. I don't care about my oath. We saw that with the Massachusetts judge.
Yes.
I don't think it's going to happen with every judge, is it's going to go straight up and violate the Constitution. So I hope someone's watching that knows Donald Trump, because this clause, along with the fact that absentee ballots and voting have been around since 1775, he's got a heck of a good case here for an executive order that will hold up even against an Obama-appointed judge.
People should go back and read the Federalist Papers and look what the founding fathers said about the Constitution. The Constitution wasn't open for interpretation. The Constitution worked like a piece of living machinery. Each section had defined parts for it to work properly. You didn't get to alter or change the Constitution. It is what it is. And all of the states, it's guaranteed that they have a Republican form of government. The Republican form of government is set out in the Constitution. if a state goes out of that, then the federal government is there to restrain that state, because all the states, when they came together and they had the Constitution, all agreed that this is the way it was going to go. If you want communism, what you have to do is leave the Union. Then you're no longer part of the United States and you don't get to say in their affairs. And the citizens of your states can choose whether they want to stay in the United States or they could go with communism, right? That's really all you have. There's nothing else. If not, too bad, right?
It's true. And that's very true, Dale. So everyone watching should be clamoring this all over the internet. I discovered this codicil 2 weeks ago. It's very small. And believe it or not, the Constitution is very long. Now, there's a voting section of the Constitution. There's a civil rights section of the Constitution. It addresses a lot of different areas. It is easy to miss, but it's hard to believe after 2 centuries, no one found it. I can't believe it. I came out of my chair. I was like, so the bottom line is Donald Trump now has the law behind him because, as that codicil says, once the states do any actions that changes electoral outcomes unfairly, it's over. Their 100% reign is over. And combined with that and the fact of absentee voting, 1775, I mean, what's that, 250 years? We just had the 250-year anniversary of the Army. So he's got a lot going for him here that this executive order, if he was to follow my blueprint, would not be struck down. But again, I'm not in the West Wing. Someone out there watching your show probably can get this material to President Trump and explain or show him this episode. And then he'll know who you are too. And he'll know who Kaysha is too. Not bad. Not bad to know good people. Not bad, even for a president of the United States, I would say. Right? So I do want to do one last thing here, Dale, on this is if you'll put up the voting map of the voting laws since the pandemic was over. You've got that.
You didn't send that one. You didn't send that one to me.
I did not send that one to you.
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah, you sent me 7 and I put them all up.
I didn't. Okay. Well, I'm going to give it to you right now, and then there I'm going to send it to you right now, Dale, and then you can flash it up real quick, right? Okay, because this is really good. Okay, I just sent it to you on your text message, Dale. You'll see it in a minute, and then if you can transfer that onto the screen, our viewers are going to be very interested to see what the states have been up to since the pandemic, and I can tell you, everything that the Democrats have been doing is exactly the opposite of what you would think you would be doing in a democracy. It resembles more of a Iran, North Korea, Venezuela, Russia routine. So Did you get that?
Yeah, give me a second. I'll get it up here in a minute.
The voters are going to be blown away. But we have to put an end to these across the board. Anybody, the whole country, can vote by mail. It wasn't set up that way. It was first set up for the troops. They only expanded it to the citizens when so many people were very, very sick in the early 1900s at the turn of the century. And it stayed that way till 2020 when, of course, we had to vote by mail. One last thing before you put it up that I think your viewers will find very interesting. There is no such thing as mail-in ballots. Mail-in ballots was a sexy name given to the way that we were forced to vote in 2020. All of us had to mail in our ballots. Thus, the name mail-in ballots was born.
Yeah.
There's not one mention of the words mail-in ballots in any voting law in the land. Just to be clear. Now, our viewers are going to love this. First of all, this is the current laws now, not before COVID, but as we speak today. See those states in red? Those states in red, the only way you could vote was by mail. They didn't even have voting stations. If you wanted to vote live for the experience of voting and to get into the system, you couldn't. It was either vote by mail or nothing. Broad way of breeding fraud. 8 states. And what happens if those 8 states spread to 15, 20, 25 states? 3/4 of the country becomes elections are all by mail. We will never know who actually won an election and who actually lost an election. The states in blue, anybody can get a ballot. 25 years old, and like I said, LA Fitness, boom. The only states that went back to the Constitution, and put that back up again for me, Dale, real quick, please. The only states that went back up to the Constitution are the states in gray, and that's 13 states where you do have to have an excuse to get a ballot to vote by mail, or else you vote in person the way your parents did, the way your great-grandparents did, the way their parents did. So you can see we're headed in the wrong direction. And that's why I've laid out a blueprint for Donald Trump to get all that red and blue out of there. And it is legal. And I hope someone that's watching this show will let him know there's a man named John Goodman in Hallandale Beach, Florida, a private citizen who has homeschooled himself in political science and has found that clause that changes everything. And it's recent. I just found it, as I said, less than 2 weeks ago. So we may be in better shape despite Democrat judges trying to ruin our democracy.
You know, the funny thing is that there were 13 colonies at the time of the Revolutionary War, right?
I was thinking
That is ironic. That is ironic.
It looks like history is about to repeat itself, because when you look at everything that's going on, I mean, you're seeing complete madness. You're looking at the you have, like, I mean, activist judges that are going ahead to strike down the Constitution. They're protecting illegal immigrants so that they can shift the vote in the country. They're going ahead and they're stopping ICE from getting illegals and criminals from out of there. Yes, there are some things where they're making mistakes and they blow that up, but most of the time they're not making mistakes. Why not focus on the guys that they're like, okay, they just took this criminal that was murdering people and kicked them out of the country. Like, I mean, do you want murderers living in your neighborhood? I don't. I don't care where you came from. They don't need to be around the rest of the people, whether you put them in prison or you deport them, because if they're your own citizens, put them in prison, because it's your responsibility to deal with it. If they're not your citizens, send them back to where they came from, because that's their responsibility, not ours, right? Like, that's just common sense. But now we're looking at people who want to break down society. And if America gets broken down, the rest of the world, we're screwed. Like, I'm not even going to... You think Canada's going to be able to go ahead and we can't even fight our way out of a wet paper bag at this point in time. So,
that's right. And like Kaysha was saying, the Democrats do seem to treat immigrants better than American citizens. And another example is, remember, the Democrats were asking immigrants, where do you want to go? And they were flying them there. Remember those flights that were going to Westchester Airport in New York because it's a sanctuary city? They were flying into a strip in Chicago, which is a sanctuary city. I mean, and when they checked into the hotel, I'm sure in the check-in paperwork at the Crown Plaza was a registration form with a voting ballot. And I'm sure they voted early voting Democrat right there. There's always a catch, and the catch always is the same end game. The Democrats want power, love power, and cannot live without power. And they will break the Constitution. They will go illegal. They will go rogue. It'll be whatever it takes. And many of us, I'm almost 60. I didn't think I'd live long enough to ever see a judge strike down a presidential order that's only asking that you be a citizen to vote, which is about as reasonable as it gets. And it's like near the top of the Constitution. So obviously the judge knows what she was doing, Judge Denise Casper in Massachusetts. It's a disgrace. I don't think it'll hold up, but you know what? There's been so much lawfare, you can't take anything for granted anymore. That's why this blueprint with that codicil becomes a factor. And I just hope that Donald Trump will review it. I'm not on here for fame or fortune. I want the country back with fair elections where the power hungry Democrats can't cheat to take it. And if they take it on fair elections, I will accept that.
Well, the thing
If Democrats win on fair elections, I accept that, but not this way.
yes. I mean, the thing that people are failing to realize, they don't need to have the law changed permanently. They just need it to be changed long enough for them to gain their objective. Because if people don't realize what's going on here, you're seeing a large scale attack against the United States. This is waging
Oh
war
my goodness.
without waging
Big.
war. They're destroying like
This is
the
war.
food supplies and everything else like that. They're creating chaos. You're looking at who's funding those, like, for example, the No Kings protests. Like the lady from Walmart, Soros, and all these people are funding those things. Those people should have their assets frozen. They should be declared terrorists because that's what they are. And Walton, who's an American citizen, should be arrested for insurrection and all these other crimes because you're going against the United States. You're going at supporting destroying the Constitution. If the Constitution goes away, then you're not the United States, right? You're communist, right? Like, I mean,
If I was a
And
district
what
attorney, if I was on the DOJ and Pam Bondi, or I was on the Supreme Court, you know that the judge Denise Casper in Massachusetts, high crimes and misdemeanors is a definition of treason, and I tell you, when you knowingly change the Constitution from only a citizen can vote to anyone can vote, to me that is treason. Because now you have changed the whole dynamic of the country. And now you're letting individuals that have no legal right to influence the country take over. That's treason.
well,
And it's certainly a violation of the Constitution. I hope someone will call out Judge Denise Casper in Massachusetts. This was the most egregious lawfare up to date.
So how did quote from a criminal grand jury, and this was about 100 years ago. They said that conspiracy to prevent the enforcement of a United States statute is conspiracy to commit treason by levying war against the United States, and this was to prevent the passage of a draft, something for the draft. But it doesn't matter whether the law is preventing it from coming into force or preventing its enforcement when it's already there. So if you're trying to abrogate the Constitution by preventing its enforcement by doing something else, when you do things like this, ultimately it will end in violence. And that is what is going on, is that you're using lawfare to levy war against the United States to gain an advantage so that you can clean them up when the time for arms comes. And that is just ridiculous. It's treason.
Dale, here's one more quote that recently came out from President Trump concerning absentee ballots. And he's starting to understand the problem. And so I hope I'm helping him any way I can. He said, quote, "Absentee ballots, by the way, are fine." Trump told he was saying this on August 13th. I'm sorry, August 13th. "Absentee ballots, by the way, are fine, but the universal mail-ins that are just sent all over the place where people can grab them and grab stacks of them and sign them and do whatever you want, that's the thing we're against." Unquote. That's from President Trump, August 13th. So, and there it is. Wow, you're a magician. Dale Houdini Richardson. Yes.
So
there you go.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, he's not asking for anything strange. This is just common sense. Like, when you have that many mail-in ballots, you create a control system nightmare and you allow for the introduction of cheating. They know that there's cheating all the time. There's always people going to do that, but when you put enough controls, you don't allow them enough to cheat for them to affect the outcome, right? And this is what you want to do, because there's always somebody going to do something criminal, but then you need to start making penalties for this. Like, judges need accountability. In the Declaration of Independence, it said that the judges were dependent on the king for their salaries and they were doing his bidding. And they couldn't do anything to the judges. Why? Because the king had the judges protected. Judges should not get protection for destroying the Constitution. They need prosecution. And in fact, a judge who's supposed to be working for the republic, which is the people, to ensure that everything that is done to preserve that republic. If they allow it to be destroyed, they should be prosecuted, and they should have aggravating charges. These are factors that should increase the sentences of whatever they get.
That's right. The Democrats, they don't like this country. They don't like this country. Why do you think the Democrats were screaming about the parade? Now, I don't know if you watched the parade.
I was
It
there.
was nothing like, oh, wonderful. I'm jealous. Did you have a good spot?
Yeah,
you have
we
a good
did
local-
actually. It was really good. Yeah, it was
So
really
then,
nice.
so then
It was
you
great.
can attest to what we know, that you see these North Korean parades where they have the tanks with the torpedoes sticking up to the sky, and they're purposely trying to scare the wits out of you. This was, to me, more of a celebration of the Army, because you didn't see that much artillery. You saw some flyovers, you saw some tanks, but it was more of a celebration. And actually, I thought of it almost like a Macy's Day Parade for the military, in a way, because they were marching, and then there was a big screen TV and a narrator. So you were learning, this is the 4th Brigade, this is the uniforms from the Civil War that they're donning. So you were learning, and they were marching, and they were playing their trumpets. It was nothing like the parades that they do in these communist countries, which are nothing but just to scare the rest of the world. This wasn't a scare. The country already knows we're a force in the military. He didn't have to do a parade to tell them. This was a celebration with learning, moderating, big screens, uniforms from that day. So the Democrats hated that. Then again, another example, they hate America.
Yes.
Yep.
We're running up on time. We went way over time.
We are. Can you flash my X up on there?
Yes,
My
I
X
will do
address.
that. Tell people where they
Just
can
give
find
30
you before we go.
Right. Go to my X page, and you can see it's at x.com/johngoo 77697793. I do a weekly episode called John Goodman Comments, and I only post episodes that are factual. I do not post conspiracy theories or opinions. I research before I post a thing, and I have a lot of people watching, and I think you'll enjoy it, and I think you'll learn something, but I'll also keep you in the loop without the propaganda and the spin that you tend to get from national media. So again, x.com/johngoo 77697793. And I actually have my email at the top of my profile page, which is unusual, but I have a lot of people that want to talk to me that way. And so, hey, it's all legitimate. Why not? Go ahead. Send me an email. If you have something you think I should be talking about that's valid, I will consider it. So again, great email site. You'll learn a lot. You'll love the videos. You'll love the information. Thanks a lot, Dale. Appreciate that.
All right, thank you, and thank you for coming. We'll have to have you again on for some more updates. I'm going to close here with a prayer, and then I'll give my daughter her final thoughts. All right. Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this day. We thank you for your love, grace, and mercy. We thank you for the hope you have given us. And Father, watch over the leaders to make the right decisions, and watch over President Trump that he can make the right decisions to help protect and preserve the Republic for all the Americans and their posterity, and to help be a beacon of light and liberty for the entire world. And Lord, watch over the men and the women, help them to come together to rebuild their families, their churches, their community, and their nation, that we could have some sensibility and protection for the children who need it the most, is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thanks, Dad, for the prayer as always. And thank you, Sir John, for joining us today. It was pleasant to have you on. Hopefully we have you again in the future. And yeah, guys, we really need to share this information, because if this can get out to people who can actually learn and understand and start taking the right action towards it, that will be an extreme benefit, because we do need to make sure that we have the right things in place so that our country can function like properly, because what's happening the last couple of years is 100% treason. And a shout out to President Donald Trump again for his birthday, happy birthday. And please support Tina Peters, people who are being persecuted like her, as well as Mike Lindell. And, we appreciate all of your guys' time and considerations, and we will catch you in the next one. And to my dearest Karis, until we meet again, my friend, and we will. Ciao.